science, history, and trains, and do it all with some very fun activities. I'm Mr. Bob Lutzenberger, Education Director for the National Railroad Museum. If you're watching us today on Facebook Live and want to type in a question, feel free to do so. We'll answer those right after the segment. If you would just like to type in and let us know who you are and where you're watching from, we'd love to hear from you as well. And make sure that you like the National Railroad Museum's Facebook page. Well, we're doing a little history and a little loafing here on the workbench this morning. We're talking about the Pullman loaf. Yes, bread. A while back, Mr. Bob's sitting there in the evening watching one of his favorite cooking shows, and the gadget guru comes on, and she starts explaining about a bread pan that has a lid. And she's saying that it's a wonderful, thick, heavy pan for making a beautiful loaf of bread. But why would anybody want to have a bread pan with a lid on it? Makes no sense. Silly invention. Well, about this time, Mr. Bob's ready to start throwing things at his TV set, yelling, "Wait a minute, that's something from the railroads." Come to the dining car. Let's see if we can figure this out. For us in the dining car, the dining experience was pretty fancy. In the confines of the dining car, every luxury that could be provided was. Service was top flight. We had a very comfortable and enjoyable culinary experience. Back in the kitchen, however, space was used to the utmost of efficiency. As you notice in this picture of a Southern Pacific dining car kitchen, there is storage space quite literally all around the two chefs that are working there, and they're working in pretty close quarters. So everything had to be stored exactly precisely where it had to be, and it had to take up the least amount of space. That brings us back to bread. If we take a loaf like the sourdough loaf that I have here, while very tasty, you can imagine that this loaf in an irregular shape is not that efficient when it comes to storage. We also can't predict how each loaf is going to look, so if you can imagine stacking them up, we get kind of an unruly pile of bread, if you will. Not the most efficient use of space. The other problem with a loaf like this, when we cut into it, what we end up with from end to end on the bread is slices that are not consistent in size. So we have an inefficiency not only in storage, but also in size slices for making sandwiches or other dishes, which again kind of takes about the economy that we would have for this type of loaf. Good tasting, but not necessarily good storage-wise. So, according to history here in the United States, which isn't 100% accurate, George Pullman began using or invented, as some will report, the lidded pan. The lidded pan gives you a loaf of bread that actually comes out in a very consistent shape, consistent slices all the way through the loaf, and very easy to stack. Now, this loaf pan actually was not an invention of George Pullman. A Pullman loaf. You will notice very thin crust, which in a lot of cases gets trimmed off when we're making sandwiches. A nice soft white center, plenty of space, consistent shape throughout the loaf, and toasts up very nicely, especially for those grilled cheese sandwiches. So, the Pullman loaf, something that was actually an invention before dining cars, but in our country credited to George Pullman. You can still today, if you wish to bake at home and experiment with a Pullman loaf pan, you can find these new from a number of different sources. Take Mr. Bob's advice, they are wonderful pans to bake in. If you would like to read a little bit more about the dining car experience, well, visit the National Railroad Museum's website, nationalrrmuseum.org. Go to our museum store section under the shop tab and look for the book Dining by Rail by James Porterfield, an excellent source of information about railroad dining and the story of the Pullman loaf. The National Railroad Museum inspires lifelong learning by providing dynamic educational opportunities through the preservation of railroad objects, engaging exhibits, and innovative programs. As a nonprofit educational institution, we are supported by both public and private contributions and, of course, our museum members. If you would like more information how you can help support the National Railroad Museum or would like to become a museum member, visit our website, nationalrrmuseum.org, and thank you so much for all of your support. Hey, I'm Mr. Bob. Thanks for visiting Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench, and we hope to see you here again real soon.